To help us sculpt, I'm gonna be using PureFile. I definitely recommend you downloading PureRef. I'm gonna leave it in a notepad where you can copy the link and download this program. It's free. And I'll give you this file that I'm gonna be using. A lot of good anatomy references comes from Anatomy for Sculptors book. If you are serious about anatomy, you definitely should get this book. It's amazing. And of course, if you're serious about sculpting heads, you should create your own PureRef and put the things that are useful to you. I have a lot of faces that are beautiful to me and where I pivot my art to, and some of separated parts. So we will be using a bit of this file to explain everything. So you can open it up if you want, or just see on the screen that I'm gonna be trying explaining this. PureRef is very useful in many ways. I will make a small window, which we're gonna be using, and we'll start for something like a skull. And you can keep this file on top with Ctrl+Shift+A, and you can see always on top enabled. Now I can use Blender and it's still here. I can still change views and work. That's why this program is I'm gonna teach you another very small shortcut in Blender. It's holding Control and pressing space. And the screen that you're hovering gonna be expanded. This way we're going to be able to see all of the sculpting screen. Okay, so we can start sculpting. Mirror thingy symmetry is on. Let's move into front view. You can use numpad keys. 1 is the front view, 3 is the side view, 7 is the top view. If you want to go to the side view and change another view, you can press 9. It just changes the position. So this is the front view. If I press 9, it's gonna be the back view. You can change, of course, using these lines. Just by pressing on the thingy, bump, and it's gonna change into it. Okay, so let's start by choosing grab tool, G. At the beginning, I'm gonna keep telling which shortcuts. I'm not sure for how long, but at some point I will probably, when we're gonna be doing another exercise, I will stop talking about the shortcuts. But now press G and go into the front view and drag down your head like this. Now, another thing that I see a lot of beginners make a mistake is not caring how big is the brush size. I see a lot of people using smaller and dragging like this, but the size of my brush is very, very important. I always, well, for how long I sculpt, I don't think too much about my brush size, but I automatically move in the correct size. So I will Ctrl+Z a bit back to where we get the sphere. And again, I'm using huge brush size at the beginning. And another thing is look at where are the dots. You can see these 2 yellow dots, small dot, and that is important, where you're gonna click and where you're gonna drag from and your brush size. So this is how big is my brush, and this is where I click. If you feel like your brush is not doing what mine is, these might be 2 problems. And another thing I see a lot of beginners do is using always small brush sizes. Not always small is better, and it's not about small detail, but I will try to keep that in mind while explaining everything. Okay, so I'm gonna drag this down. I'm changing my a bit position and dragging down, but not completely down, a bit to the side. So you can see this protrusion happening, but I'm not doing it that strongly. I'm gonna move to the side view with button key. See that you cannot see my shortcuts when it's here, so I'm gonna move it a bit to the side. If you open up my Pure file, the reference file, you can see that this skull image has male and female. We're gonna be sculpting female head, and probably this is the point where I should talk about the heads. You can make it a bit longer so you can see both front and a back view. I mean the front and side view. And we're kind of trying to get that with our sphere beginning. I'll click from this side, very big brush, and put it in front. I'm gonna do the same with the top of the head, a bit more here, and just trying to get the shape correctly. What I like to do is make my brush a bit smaller at the bottom of it, drag my chin out like that. What I'm gonna do, all of the steps gonna be quite important, but a lot of people just become lazy and don't do these things. What I'm gonna do is use clay strips, go at the bottom and carve out. If you want to carve out with your brush, not draw, what you have to do is hold Ctrl and your brush gonna change the side which it works. So if the brush is drawing, it's gonna take away. If the brush is taken away, it's gonna put on. If you're not certain which brush takes away automatically, it's like draw sharp. It takes out of mesh automatically, but if I hold Ctrl, it's gonna put on sharp line. Okay. So with the clay strips, I'm gonna draw like that. Don't draw too strongly, but this way we can shape this form, which is gonna be important later. Now I'm a bit different than other teachers in a way where I don't like very, very low vertex count. I do recommend you using lower vertex count if it's harder for you. The higher you go, the more skill and harder it becomes to control. So I'll try purposely keep it lower than usual, but my count might be still pretty high for learning. Another important Blender tool that we're gonna be using is Remesher. And Remesher has quite a few things, but most important things that we're gonna be using is voxel size and just remesh button itself. If I just press on it, remesh now, you can see that these small details changed and the vertex count changed. Now I'm not sure which shortcut's gonna be because Blender, for some reason just keeps changing it. The shortcut is Shift R and you can move left to right side again. Now, before applying and before anything, I tell you, be very, very careful with this number and how fast it changes because it is a bit dangerous. Some people can even crash their PC, but if you keep with me, it should be fine. So anything a number of 0.0 till 0.015 is decently safe. It's gonna be hard for your PC, don't get me wrong, it's gonna be hard for your PC, but it's decently okay. If you're by accident gonna go to 0.0 something, now this is very dangerous line. A lot of PCs can get into trouble with that. So I'm just saying and reminding you to be careful about this number. For now, I'll just go to 0.0 around 5 and press Ctrl and R to apply this. And we got around 50,000. I usually like to work around 300,000 for now, but 500,000, 50,000 is okay. Now, a lot of people are saying, why does your head look smoother than mine? I'll remesh it again. And you can see a lot of things are not smooth. And I always, a lot of times, use my smooth brush, but you just don't see me changing the brushes. What I do is just hold Shift and draw slightly around the mesh. You don't have to do it strongly, but it's gonna make it look smoother. And I like the smooth look of my head sculpts, or actually I like the smooth look on any sculpt. Okay, when we have it set up, be very, very sure that you're not rushing and trying to get your base right. So I'll use some annotations to draw what I mean. If you look at a head that is at the bottom here, you can see that the head is not straight line down, okay? And a lot of people make this mistake or even go around and make the bottom side bigger than the top side. This is what I'm talking about. So make sure your head has a tiny bit of tilt here, same as reference. In the side view, you can see that as well as you're in images. I'm gonna be going somewhere here. We're gonna fix a lot of these things. Don't think too hard. Make sure we have this line. It's gonna be where our node's gonna be standing. But I'm gonna tell all about that a bit later. Let me hide it so it's not interrupting. And I like when I have the base of the head kind of ready. It's not perfect. I'm gonna change a few things a bit later, but let's go back to clay strips. And I like to form a jaw like this. And I see one of the things is that we didn't change our view focal length. Focal length is very important for sculpting faces. Focal length depends from how big of the object you're sculpting and from what objects you're sculpting. For faces and most of the body of the character, I like to use something around 100. You can go from 80 to 120. All of these values are fine, even a bit lower like 70, but I like using 95. I'll use 95 and you can see the view became much closer and a bit different. So when we have our jawline drawn like that, I'm gonna hold shift and smooth out a tiny bit. And I'll choose scrape brush, go at the bottom and just scrape and make the jaw a bit more flat like this. I'll smooth it gently, not too much. Smooth a bit of the head. Now, if you go into the top view, head is not, again, doesn't have a straight line or oval line as I have right here. What I'm talking about straight line is this. It doesn't have this line. The head is usually a bit larger in the back. This point of the head is actually the biggest. Let's do that. I'm gonna make a head a bit bigger. And like that. I'm gonna fix the back a bit too. And if I press 1, you can see the back is quite huge. I think I made just the head a bit too big, so I'm gonna use big grab brush tool and move from the top over here a bit in. We'll still have this shape, but the head is just not gonna be that big because it's not that big. But next thing I like to draw in is eyes. But first I'm gonna use draw sharp. I like draw sharp. I use quite big. Some people will go and use this small brush and try draw in the shape that I'm going to explain. But I like to use quite big brush, at least for now. The eyes are close to the middle of your head. It's not exactly in middle, it's a bit higher. So with the draw sharp, I'm gonna draw in the shape like that. Don't be too afraid. And we'll get shape like that, which is perfect. I'm gonna go to the side view. It's number 3. Press grab tool. And this is gonna be where our nose bridge is going to be. I'm gonna make that different. Actually want a bit bigger head because I feel like it's a bit small. Our forehead is a bit small. And now we will be needing some eyes. Eyes very helps with position. I'll go back into object mode. Shift A to add new object. And we'll be using spheres for this time. UV sphere. Now UV sphere is inside. I will use G and grab and move it to the side. Press R. I'll use this time a functions with press X. This so we can only rotate on X axis and right in 90. And you can see at the top, it's hard for me to show where, but if you look where I'm aiming with my mouse here right now, you can see all the functions that I'm gonna write in my keyboard. So I press R, X, you can see global X written and right in 90. And you can see rotation 90 degrees. And if you do that, your sphere gonna be looking at the side. I'll hold the sphere and press Ctrl A. Because we moved it in the object mode, you can see that orange small dot going to be inside the object. It's not gonna work if that small dot is there. So what we have to do is reset the dot right back into the middle. Control A is just for that. Apply, and all transforms mean everything we did with it. And you can see the orange dot now is in the middle when we select this object. If it's not, the mirror modifier not gonna work. So I'm gonna press Ctrl Space to go back to view, modifiers, and add a mirror modifier. And you can see we'll have two eyes right now. And instead of moving object like this now, because it's gonna be a bit difficult to understand what's happening, we're going to go into edit mode. You can go into edit mode by using this small menu or just pressing tab. Press S and drag in to make it a bit smaller. Go into the side view to adjust eyes to be right here. I like a bit more Asian style faces. So the eye is a bit further out than in the Western where the eyes is a bit more in the skull. I can put somewhere around here. It's still gonna play with the position a bit later. And when it's right here, I'm gonna press G and move X to move it on the X axis and put it in the head. Now, a lot of things are, let me first just rename it to head and eyes. Let's go with the first measurable thing that happens with your head is eyes. I'll Shift D and move the eyes into the middle because we don't need this. If you really want to get into the middle of the object, what you can do is press object, set origin to geometry, and Alt G to move it back in here. And what we'll need is array. We will need 5. Try to align top like this. These two merging with these. So a lot of people are saying that the head size is around 5 of your eyes. And it's true if you want to keep with your measurements, but it can be not exactly that. Let me select my annotations. So the head would be like that. Sorry for my very bad drawing. So this is how big our head would be. This is where our eyes would be on the face. And this is where would be the edge of the head. Now, this thing is not 100% true all the time. The distance in between eyes, as you can see in this case, is one eye. Let me apply the modifier so it's going to be easier to explain. One eye in between eyes is the distance usually in between eyes. You can see mine is a bit smaller. So you would say I need to make it size bigger, but it's not always the case. It can go either in or outwards. Generally, people saying that somewhere around this much as I did, making a difference in here, or even pushing outwards like that. So I wouldn't make this is not must. I don't like when people say you must put it in between like that. One eye in between to your head. No, I say there is always an error that you can have that makes the head more interesting. Of course, if you're a beginner, you probably should try to keep with these values, but I don't want you to get stuck in it. Okay, so I'll delete all of these things. So in general, our eyes are actually gonna be a bit bigger. For the head, not very natural, a bit more stylized. I'll select the head back, or actually, let's add a neck for now. What I'm gonna do is Shift A, while we're in the object mode, don't forget that, and add a cylinder. Don't move the cylinder from the center. If your objects are not created in the center, it's because of your cursor. This red with light white lines thingy is your 3D cursor. And if it's somewhere else, your object is gonna be created in else position. To reset the position of an object, you just have to hold Alt and press G. So I say G is for movement, and reset the movement is just holding Alt. Same works for other things like rotating. Alt R will reset the rotation. So with the same thing you rotate. And S is like the scale. The same thing you scale, you can press Alt S and it's gonna come back. So before we used the option of applying with Ctrl R, Ctrl A and apply. And if we apply, then we won't be able to go back. So just make sure you did not apply and we can go back into where it was. I'll press tab to go into edit. Now I have annotation selected. Just don't forget to go select box and I will move it down. I'll use G to move and Z to move only on Z axis because I don't want to accidentally move my neck to the side. I'll go into side view and press S to scale it up. I'll press S again and Z to scale it only on Z axis. Move it a bit to the side and rotate it just a tiny bit because necks have a small tilt. You can go to our heads. And this is a very, very visible tilt. You can see neck is not straight down. So whatever you do, don't just leave your neck hanging out like here, like that. It's gonna look weird. And don't make tilt too big because you're gonna have a gamer posture. Let me delete this. And when we're ready with it, make sure it's in the center, everything is okay. We can press on it and go into the sculpting mode right now. We won't be able to do a lot of the movement because it doesn't have any vertices, and sculpting works with the vertices. You can see we have so little. So what we'll have to do is use the remesh option again. I'll just press remesh, I'll use Ctrl R, and you can see we got a bit more. I like, as I always told, to work with a bit more vertices, so I'm gonna add with Shift R, I'm gonna make it smaller, try something like 0.06. Let's remesh it, and it's 16,000. It's gonna be enough for now. I'm gonna use smooth brush to make it smooth. Use the grab tool to pull it up a bit in. I think I made the object a bit too small. And now try to form a small shape. If you probably looked at the human's neck, you have seen that it's not that straight up the line. For now, we have a straight line neck, which is not how necks work. Smooth shape. We need these lines. We need movement. Nothing is that straight at the human body. I'll make that. Just see how big of the brush I'm using to change these things. And we'll be playing a bit more with it later. But for now, it's gonna be fine. I don't like two line at the front as well, so I'm gonna change the shape, but I did forget to turn on a mirroring option in the sculpting tool. Now you can see I have a bit of mess up in here. Oh, I'll go into the small arrow and press symmetrize. I'll smooth out again. We can remesh again just to make sure everything is okay. And now it's good. I'll go with the quite big brush on the side here and pull it a bit inwards because I like a small shape in the neck. Let's go back on sculpting the head now. You can press Alt and Q on the face and it's gonna go back to the face. With Alt Q, you can switch the objects, which one you're hovering in the sculpting mode. You can use these small dots as well, but Alt Q is just easier for me at least. I'll take grab brush tool and pull it up. When you're not sure how something has to look, always go back to your references. That's why we have them. Can these use the swans that are from Anatomy for Sculptors to see how the eyes work? I don't like too close up because these ones feel to me to see these small things that we're gonna be working on a bit later, but for now we're working on the general shapes. Just take a full head. A big contrast head is a bit better. This is high contrast image. It would be easier to see. You can use these images where you can see the face planes. Face planes are very important as well. But for now, let's just choose one of the heads. I like how forward and crispy this head is. So I'm gonna use that. With the grab brush tool, I'm gonna move this a bit around. Go to the side view. Maybe drag it a bit more in. And let's start by forming our nose. Q, clay strips, and draw in a bit on top. We can make a point of our nose. Press G to go back to grab tool, make the brush size bigger, and drag your nose out just like that. Now there's a lot of options for the point of your nose. I'm not completely forming the nose tip right now, but there's a lot of ways you can have your nose tip. You can have like I'm having right now, something like that. You can even have quite sharp changes, but this is definitely more stylized. You can even have like this. There's many ways you can form the nose tip. The nose tip is very important for the nose shape. Another thing for the nose is that it's not sitting on the face, it's the face part. Let's find a good reference of the side. And you can see that the nose is on the face, especially this line. I'll drag this back. I like to do a lot of face planes when I'm starting the head. So I'm gonna press on this, which is scrape brush, and scrape out a bit from the side. What I'm thinking is if you look at this face shapes, if you see this shape, I'm looking at this part of the face. This is a bigger face plane that I'm gonna work on. I'm gonna leave this part alone, then we're gonna draw on this line right now. Let me just make this a bit smaller because it's gonna interrupt our sculpting window. So with the scrape brush tool, I'll make that from the jawline to this line, and now a bit of the front. I like to draw a line on here where your cheek is and smooth everything out. I try to make a nose, some of the line, a bit more of a line shape. And I like to add ears early. We're not gonna do a lot of work on the ears for right now, but it's gonna be useful later on. That's gonna be in the next part.